Marguerite and John, and Bram is somewhere around in the background if we need him. Yep, thank you. The floor is yours.
Thank you, Chair. Mike's just, yep, the presentation.
Can you, if you want to grab the other one, we can somehow,
Do you want that one?
still can't understand why we don't have three microphones there. People shuffling microphones all the time.
Thank you, Chair. Just before we start, like to make a couple of very quick observations. You'll see on the agenda there's two items here. The reason we've...
John, can you move that further over because you look awkward and we apologise for you not having your own microphone.
At least I'm not in Lycra, anyway.
For our benefit, we're very, very grateful.
Go.
So just a couple of very quick observations before we get into the meat of this. You'll see on the agenda there's two items here, and the reason we've separated it out into a report on SkyPath, the project, and then separated again to the consideration around the PPP is just to try and assist everyone with the debate so that we ensure that we get a bit of clarity and quality around the discussion between the project and the procurement process. So that's the reason for the two separate pieces. On that, I'll just actually hand over to Marguerite, but before that, I'd just like to sort of reinforce a couple of the observations that have been made by some of the previous speakers about the amount of time and effort and the quality of the work that Marguerite, particularly Marguerite, and actually almost solely Marguerite, has done over the last 4 or 5 years on this project, and the skill that she has exhibited in managing not just the direct stakeholders, but the much wider group of people that have got an interest in this one way or the other. And I'm also staggered with the amount of time, effort and resource that has gone into something that, as Councillor Lee quite rightly pointed out, when you look at it relative to some of the other projects that we undertake here and the scale and size of the budget, it's relatively small. Probably the underwrite, if it ever comes to pass, is probably less than the cost of a swimming pool. And I think that context needs to be borne in mind here. Anyway, on that note, Marguerite, I'll hand over to you.
Thank you, John. This report, I just want to talk briefly to the progress update, which is on the page 2 of the report, from paragraph 12 down. But first, I've just got some slides to sort of explain the project a bit more. For those of you that are at the workshop, you will have seen some of them. So this is the map that Barbara presented, just showing the network connection. And I just want to highlight that is the importance of SkyPath as a project to help complete the network for cycling and walking. So these are I've got two images of the southern of each landing. So this one is under the bridge at Westhaven, the southern landing, and at the northern landing it's under the bridge at the end of Northcote Point. This is an internal view of what a SkyPath could look like with the viewing platform there. And then we've got an external view looking towards the north. And that's all my images. So I just want to quickly run through what progress since I last presented in December 2013. So there's been a lot of work that has happened on the wind tunnel testing in particular, with an external company in Australia, doing the wind tunnel testing. They do the work for the NZTA for the bridge itself. And then NZTA have reviewed that and found that did not identify any significant concerns. So that's paragraph 13. Paragraph 14, we've had the resource consent lodged, it was granted, and then it was appealed to the Environment Court, and we're going through that process now. There's just a little update there about the timing. And then paragraph 15, I've just given an update about the connections, including AT began consulting on the parking scheme for Northcote Point beginning of last week. And then last point there about SeaPath and where NZTA are up to on that work, and the feedback from the consultation on SeaPath about needing a connection to SkyPath and the importance of that. Thank you. Any questions?
That's it. Okay. Questions? Yes.
Yeah, thank you. There was a comment earlier in one of the presentations that if someone was standing on the viewing bay, they could walk out in front of a cyclist, but I see here, it's actually, you can see in the sides of that, so you can see if someone's in that bay when you're riding or walking along. Is that
That's
is that
correct.
correct? Okay.
If I can go back one, can you see the little seats as well?
Yes.
Sort of creating a separation.
Yeah.
And there's design markings on, or colour on the ground there, just
Yeah.
showing where you need to be careful.
Okay, thank you.
Councillor Watson.
Yeah, thank you. The actual platform is just beneath the level of
That's
the road.
correct, the carriageway, yeah.
Yeah, so I know you did wind testing. As far as noise testing goes, because it can be very unpleasant if you're at the same grade, I'm assuming that greatly reduces any noise from the actual traffic going over the bridge.
That's correct. And it's an open space, so it's not like the noise is trapped and echoing.
Okay, so did we do any testing for that, or that's the assumption?
For the resource consent, there was a noise assessment, yes.
Okay, thank you.
Councillor Walker and then Councillor Wood.
Sure, and I'm just looking at the image there. How does the separation between cyclists and pedestrians work, and also the separation between cyclists and walkers going both ways?
So there's no
Blind spot left side, same for me.
line markings or definite
Don't see on the
separation.
left.
There's an encouragement for people travelling north to be on the left-hand side, and then vice versa on the right. There's a detailed operations plan that was prepared as part of the resource consent and has been updated following mediation and the Environment Court process about how you manage users, how the share with care process would work, the number of security guards that would be on the pathway and how they would get around. So that's sort of all managed, and also, excuse me, the design of SkyPath meets the building codes in terms of wheelchair access and those kind of things. And so it actually goes going along. Then there's a flat platform, and then that continues along the whole pathway, which will keep speeds at a. They didn't do it to keep speeds lower, but that's a consequence of needing to meet that those codes.
Councillor Casey and then Councillor Wood, sorry.
This is about just anything.
About the project itself.
Yeah, that's good. I've got 4 areas, and they'll all be familiar to you, but in no particular order. We've heard a lot today about accessibility, and I've heard wheelchairs now mentioned 2 or 3 times. I'm interested in other forms of disability, like people with sight impairment or who are blind. Have we got complete accessibility of the SkyPath to everyone?
Yes. Now, for the resource consent, the Trust spoke to a number of parties, like the Blind Foundation, and got their letters of support saying it met those criteria.
Excellent. Second is dogs, on leash with any constraints you like. But the question is whether that has been considered and what your option is for the 100,000 dog owners who might want to take their pooch across in a safe way, sharing with care.
So in the operation plan I mentioned, at the moment it's restricting dogs except unless they're for blind.
Right, so I might appeal to my colleagues then when we get to the debate on this, that as a council we should be actively asking the operator to look at ways in which dogs could be allowed access with certain constraints. We're not saying what they are, but definitely it shouldn't be a no dogs in Auckland when you have 106,000 dogs who want to cross. I've got 2 more. My next one is about the 25 years clause.
Is that about the PPP?
Yes,
So can we answer that in a report too,
we can
That's the
indeed.
one, yep.
Keep that one.
please?
Children are not in your patronage figures at all. They don't feature. In fact, you say that. And it might be another political question, but I would very much like this council to look at having under 5s accompanied by adults free of charge. And I know that, so it's kind of not even a question to you. It's just signalling that I would like that to be part of our discussion later, that it would be a wonderful thing to give to Auckland And because children are not featured, there is an opportunity for us to maybe in principle impress that upon the operator. So that's all for now, thanks.
Councillor Cashmore.
I thought Mr Wood.
He's looking at something
Oh,
else.
okay.
Right,
Dr.
go
Woods.
ahead.
Thank you, Mr Chair. NZTA, we've had some comments this morning about NZTA has not given a tick or an indication about patronage, and also about the actual construction and format, I understand might be altering, but particularly about the patronage and loading. So when are we going to receive their tick? Or
So
what?
the NZTA process is a long process, and we've always known that. So we're working through it. There's more detail in the business report, which is attached to report 2. But just briefly, they've said it can be attached to the bridge, provided that strengthening work happens. We'll know how much once the detailed design is done, and that there'll need to be a load limit. So that is a maximum load of any, the total number at any one time. So it's not about actual patronage, it's about the number at one time
Yeah,
on
it's a
there.
load.
And we've always known that and taken that into account when we're looking at the patronage, and we're comfortable that it's not impacting on the sort of the financial revenue. They've done assessment when the composite design was put up in 2014. They've reassessed it following wind tunnel testing, and so now they're going through their internal processes, which is 3 steps, and they're up to presenting. So it's gone through 2 happily, and they're presenting to their board early next month.
So we are just stepping through their work program to get the actual numbers?
Yes.
Yeah, it seems odd to be able to work out potential patronage or load capability without the engineering going with that, but I guess that will come through when we get to stage 3.
So the patronage work is about likely usage from the public, whereas theirs is about, it's a technical thing that they will reassess once the detailed design is done in case there's any changes.
Because that will affect the patronage numbers potentially.
It could if it was very low.
Yeah.
The other thing we're looking at with NZTA is having a higher limit in the weekends when it's more popular and there's less traffic on the bridge. So that's an extra, how do you manage that? But they're willing to look at that, and that will be quite useful.
All right, thank you.
Councillor Wood.
Yeah, thank you. My question was really similar to what Councillor Cashmore just asked. I just wanted to know, we heard that Sky Path will be up and running in 2017, but what's the time frame now for this work? For the NZTA approval work up to their licence to occupy?
So the licence to occupy has always been the last thing that would be granted.
Yeah.
I don't agree with what the trust has said about it being open at the end of next year, and my attachment, the business report to report 2, I've got the timeframes in there. I think it's more 2018. And so, but as part of working through this with NZTA, we're suggesting having an MOU, provided that we get approval from governing body and they get approval from their board, and that would set out in more detail how we'll work to get that licence to occupy, or confirm the discussions we've had, and it may also include draft terms of the licence to occupy.
So there'll be a building consent application as well, will there?
That's correct.
So what's the time frame? That's before the licence to occupy?
That's part of
obviously.
detailed design process.
Okay. So, do they have a time frame for it, or is it just?
For NZTA approval?
Yeah, you'll.
Yep. And can I just, it's in the report, I'll just
I'm
find the
just
page.
curious to know if there's a.
So under milestones, it's page 58 of attachment A. I've got that all detailed there.
Thank you.
Councillor Brewer.
It's been raised by one speaker, the potential health and safety issues, and I know that you haven't embarked on a detailed design. I hear what Councillor Lee was saying about NZTA's specs, but I suppose I just want some comfort around these preliminary conceptual designs, particularly in and around any issue if there was a fire as far as exits and escapes.